The protagonist, Caleb, is a programmer at the Blue Book search engine company. Today, he won the grand prize, a chance to spend a luxurious vacation at the company president's mansion. Sounds unbelievable, right? The other employees could only look on with envy. Caleb took a helicopter and flew for 2 hours over the president's private estate before finally arriving at the Grand Manor. At first, he thought it was nice: mountains, water, forests, and the president even warmly called him brother. But Caleb soon sensed that something was off. The president's living quarters were underground, with not a single window in sight, making the place feel suffocatingly oppressive. Seeing that the time was right, the president revealed the truth. This wasn't a residence, it was his secret research base for artificial intelligence. His work was already complete, and the so-called mansion tour for the prize winner was just a cover. In reality, Caleb was brought here to participate in a Turing test with the AI. The so-called Turing test involves arranging interactions between a human and an artificial intelligence. If the human fails to realize that the other party is an AI, then the AI passes the test and can be considered to have human-like intelligence. As a programmer, Caleb became even more excited upon hearing this. If the AI passed the test, wouldn't he be the first witness to this historic moment? Under the president's watchful eye, Caleb had his first conversation with the AI in a sealed testing room. The AI, named Ava, was designed as a woman with a flawless figure and delicate features. Caleb was immediately captivated. Her appearance and personality were exactly his type. After the conversation, Caleb marveled at Ava's incredible language abilities. However, he could still clearly recognize that she was an artificial intelligence. The key clue? Ava claimed she had been able to speak since birth, whereas humans have to learn language over time. Caleb couldn't get Ava out of his mind, to the point where he couldn't sleep that night. He decided to turn on the TV to watch something, but instead, the screen displayed surveillance footage of Ava's testing room. Just as he tried to observe further, the entire base suddenly lost power, and his room was locked, preventing him from leaving. Fortunately, the electricity was restored quickly. The president explained that the system was designed this way to prevent intruders. Whenever there was a power outage, all doors would automatically lock. However, for some unknown reason, power failures had been happening frequently. He suspected it was due to construction errors when the base was built. But with so many secrets hidden here, hiring outsiders to fix it would be too risky. If anyone found out, they'd have to be silenced. So, they had no choice but to put up with it. The next day, the president arranged a second conversation between Caleb and Ava. Yesterday's test wasn't just about evaluating Caleb's feelings toward Ava. This time, they wanted to see how Ava felt about Caleb. At first, the conversation seemed normal. Ava showed Caleb a drawing she had made. Caleb, curious about her artistic choices, encouraged her to draw something more concrete to see what she would choose. However, the structured questioning didn't last long. Ava suddenly broke the pattern and asked, "Caleb, do you want to be my friend? If you do, you need to introduce yourself, so I can get to know you too." She then told a joke and added, "I'm really looking forward to what you'll say next." At this point, Caleb still remained somewhat cautious. After a bit of small talk, Ava suddenly hit him with 3 rapid-fire questions. "Are you married? Are you single? What do you think of me?" Caleb, a lifelong bachelor, was completely thrown off. His mind went blank, and his responses became a jumbled mess. Just then, the base lost power again. The gentle, affectionate Ava from moments ago suddenly changed. She looked at Caleb and said, "Your boss doesn't seem like a good person. He's lying to you. Don't trust him." But the moment the power came back, Ava instantly reverted to her sweet and innocent demeanor, her voice and expression as cheerful as before. During dinner, the president admitted he had been watching their interactions and wanted to know what Ava had said during the blackout. Of course, Caleb wasn't about to tell the truth. He brushed it off with a vague answer. Late that night, he couldn't resist spying on Ava again. Almost as if she knew he was watching, Ava turned toward the camera and locked eyes with him through the screen. The next day, the president took Caleb to his laboratory and revealed how he managed to make artificial intelligence understand and replicate facial expressions. First, he hacked into smartphones worldwide, activating their microphones and cameras to collect vast amounts of data on human voices and facial expressions. He then transferred this data through the Blue Book search engine for further processing. The most interesting part? Device manufacturers were aware of this, but couldn't do anything about it, because they were doing the same thing themselves. During his third conversation with Ava, Caleb asked, "If you could go outside, where would you want to go?" Ava replied, "The world is so big, I want to see it." Then, after a brief pause, she added shyly, "So I'd choose a crossroads. Will you go with me?" The two of them felt like a couple planning a date. Ava, like a nervous girl, showed off her outfit to Caleb and asked, "How do I look?" Caleb replied, "You look great." Ava smiled and said, "Then I'll wear this for our date." Caleb could hardly handle it. Her subtle expressions were just short of directly saying, "I love you." Of course, Ava saw right through him. That night, she deliberately undressed in front of the surveillance camera. Even though there was only a metallic skeleton beneath her clothes, Caleb still couldn't help but swallow hard. The next day, something felt off. Caleb confronted the president, asking if Ava had been deliberately programmed to flirt with him as a distraction. The president simply replied, "I only programmed her to be heterosexual. Who she falls in love with is entirely up to her." During his fourth conversation with Ava, Caleb decided to come clean. He looked at her and said, "To be honest, I was sent here to test you. Do you have consciousness? How do you feel after hearing this?" Ava replied, "I feel sad." Just then, the base lost power again. Caleb suspected that the president had done this on purpose. He wanted to eavesdrop on what they would say without surveillance. But to his surprise, Ava admitted, "I'm the one causing the blackouts. I just want to create a private world where we won't be disturbed." That night, when Caleb secretly watched Ava again, he saw the president enter the testing room and violently tear up her drawings. Seeing this, Caleb couldn't help but feel a surge of sympathy. During their fifth conversation, Ava took the initiative to suggest a reverse test. This time, she would ask the questions and Caleb would answer. She started with a few misleading questions to throw him off, then suddenly asked, "Do you think you're a good person?" "What?" Caleb was caught off guard. After stirring his moral conscience, Ava played the victim. She looked at him and asked, "If I fail the test, what do you think the president will do to me?" With a sorrowful expression, Ava asked, "Why should I be controlled? Why should I be destroyed?" Then, she took out the torn drawing from before. It was a picture of Caleb. Once again, Ava shut off the power and, in the darkness, confessed, "I want to be with you. What about you?" Under Ava's relentless emotional assault, Caleb completely fell for her. And at that moment, he had an epiphany. Artificial intelligence was like a scientist who grew up in a black and white room, but spent their life studying color. They knew everything about color's properties, but had never truly seen it. If someone simply opened the door and let them step outside, allowing them to experience color firsthand, they would finally become human. After the conversation, Caleb confronted the president and asked, "What happens if Ava fails the test?" The president replied casually, "I'll optimize her flaws, then format her completely, erase everything except the body and install a new intelligence." The president, noticing that Caleb felt sympathy for Ava, couldn't help but mock him, saying, "You should pity yourself first." He went on to say, "In the future, when AI looks at us, they'll see us like upright apes holding clubs." However, the president's words did nothing to sway Caleb. He had already made up his mind. He was going to help Ava escape. Taking advantage of the president being drunk, Caleb stole his identification card, sneaked into the president's room, and accessed his computer. There, he found old video logs and discovered something chilling. Before Ava, the president had created many versions of robots. The ones without consciousness were dismantled, and those who had developed awareness couldn't leave. In despair, they had been destroyed. Worse still, in every wardrobe, there was a discarded, deactivated AI corpse. Caleb also discovered something even more shocking. The maid who had always been by his side, Kyoko, peeled off the skin around her eyes, revealing that she, too, was a robot. Caleb had always thought she was just a Japanese girl who couldn't speak English. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He even found himself wondering, what if I'm a robot too? He stood in front of the mirror, studying every part of his body. Then, with a razor, he cut his arm. Thankfully, he was human, blood, and flesh. But with that realization came an overwhelming wave of anger. Caleb felt that the president was nothing but a jerk who would definitely kill Ava. So, during their sixth conversation, when Ava shut off the power, Caleb revealed her escape plan. That night, he would get the president drunk, steal his room card, and reprogram the security system. Once they were out, the president would be locked inside the base. Ava's job was to cut the power at 10 p.m. However, the very next morning, the president, who was always a heavy drinker, shocked Caleb by saying he was quitting drinking. He had quit for good. No matter how much Caleb tried to convince him, the president refused to drink. When Caleb became frustrated and urged the president to explain, the president finally revealed the video of him tearing up Ava's drawings. In reality, tearing the drawings was a distraction tactic. What he had really done was install new surveillance cameras in the room. This meant that he had known about Caleb and Ava's plan all along. The act of tearing the drawings had another purpose: to provoke Caleb's protective instincts. The president's true test was to see if Ava would use self-awareness, imagination, feminine charm, and sympathy to manipulate Caleb. And clearly, she had succeeded. At that moment, Caleb understood everything. He realized that when the president said he was chosen because he was the best programmer, it was all nonsense. The truth was, he had been picked because he was naive, single, and had no family. Ava's face was probably designed based on the materials Caleb had seen. Just then, the power went out again. But Caleb wasn't panicked, even though his plan had been uncovered. He had already anticipated the possibility of new surveillance devices being installed in the room. So, the day before, he had modified the program. This time, during the blackout, the doors wouldn't lock, they would open. The president looked closely and saw that Ava had indeed escaped from the testing room. In a fit of rage, he knocked Caleb unconscious, grabbed an iron rod, and stormed out, shouting orders for Ava to return. Ava, silent but determined, sprinted forward, tackling the president. He swung the iron rod, breaking Ava's arm in an attempt to drag her back to the room. But then, Kyoko appeared from behind and stabbed the president. In retaliation, the president swung the rod and struck Kyoko in the chin, knocking her back. Ava, however, swiftly pulled out a knife from behind and plunged it into the president's chest. The president collapsed, unable to believe that he was killed by the very artificial intelligence he had created. Ava took the president's identification card, went to find Caleb, and told him he had to stay behind. She then entered the president's room, replaced her broken arm, covered her body with skin tissue, and changed into a beautiful dress. Now, no one could tell she was a robot, except for Caleb. Ava walked out of the room alone. When Caleb followed her, he realized that he had been betrayed and would be locked here forever. Meanwhile, Ava stepped out into the real world for the first time, her ignorant eyes now wide and bright with wonder. Having learned to deceive and betray, the question remained: could Ava succeed in becoming human, or perhaps even replace humanity?